that didn't happen. And so that was a frustration point for a lot of people, and a question that was often, kind of brought up was there was a lack of understanding and patience about how long will it take for us to have this life that we all think we want to have, or that we all want to have.
So you said the Iraqi police sometimes are corrupt. Did you ever get the chance to work with them, and how extent was the corruption in the police force there?
I dealt with the police on a few occasions. I dealt more with the Army there. When I dealt with the Army, I would work with them putting out this newspaper that we had created called Baghdad Now. And their corruption, theirs was just more laziness. They would show up and they'd be drunk. And to me, it was kind of nerve-wracking, because I'm on a combat patrol that is putting out products to the population, and so I am very close to lots of Iraqis all the time, and I am dependent on people for security. And the people that were with me were going out and we're giving out these papers, and there's lots of people coming to us to get them. And if somebody wants to come up and do something bad, I need to know that the people who are supposed to be watching us are prepared to deal with that rapidly, if not anticipate it or see it before it happens. And when the Iraqi National Guard guys that are with us, that have been tasked to help us out, a couple of them are drunk, that was aggravating to me. It didn't really sit well from a credibility standpoint and wanting to deal with them going forward. And you can imagine that as the average Iraqi citizen, and you see a guy with an AK-47 running around and got alcohol in his breath, that probably doesn't inspire a lot of confidence either. The police I dealt with, I went to a couple police stations as part of visits, and again, a police kind of commissioner in a particular area. He was a key communicator. He knew a lot what was going on. So I would go and talk to these people in the evenings when I would be out with a small team on my own. You'd see the jail, and you would see, like literally, it kind of looked like an Old West sort of jail cell, but it would be, large kind of cage with way too many people in it. And then there were just routine stories that would come to you outside the jail, and people saying how, this guy was arrested and he shouldn't have been, and he's been thrown, and this guy got out and he shouldn't have gotten out because he's actually kidnapped. And the range of stories that would inundate me and probably every other American that came within earshot of these folks, you couldn't tell, right? You couldn't tell a credible story from a story that was, a bad guy just saying, I'm innocent, I'm not the guy that did that. You couldn't tell who the murderer was, or the pickpocket, or the wife beater. You couldn't really tell. But what you could see was a cell with way too many people in it, and there were kids in the cell, and there were old men in the cell, and so you would think by a Western standard, the kids should probably be somewhere else, and the adult males should be over here, and by the way, maybe they should be a few in the cell, not packed in to where it really looks inappropriate.
So did you ever find yourself in any dangerous combat-like situations, or was it mostly just dealing with civilians?
I was in a couple of firefights while I was there. They were in the evenings. They were pretty short in duration, and which was very much to my liking. I don't need to ever, be part of that again. I was, very pleased and I guess proud of the men that I was with and the response they had to the contact we had with the enemy. I kind of think that the enemy that we were fighting at times was somewhere between insurgent and criminal, because there were places that we would go that were already kind of bad parts of town, and so to get shot at, you didn't know if you were getting shot at by an insurgent or somebody who was kind of defending their territory. You didn't really know, but if someone's shooting at you, you shoot back. So I was pleased in those incidents that people did what they were supposed to do. We got everybody out safely, and we were able to continue on with the missions that we had.
So how does this, your experiences from Iraq affect you mentally? Like, how did you deal with like the mental and emotional stress from it?
For me, it's been okay. You know, I appreciate things a lot more, I think, than I did previously, and that I talk about that cumulatively, whether it's Bosnia or Kosovo or the two tours in Iraq. We live a very sheltered life in the United States. We have, you know, a lot. We live in spaces that, you know, your room at home, you know, could serve a family of 6 maybe in other places in the world, and so a lot of Americans don't understand how good we have it here. And so when you travel, whether you go to, you know, third world parts of the country, or third world areas, or, you know, third world areas with, you know, combat going on, you have the ability to kind of see how rough things can be. And for me, you know, I've seen the absolute worst in people and the absolute best in people in these situations, and that's been inspiring in its own way when you see the best, and really disappointing when you see the worst. But I feel richer for having had those experiences and felt those stresses, and been able to help. When I went to Bosnia the first time, I had this idea as a lieutenant that I could, you know, have this greater impact, and that was really appropriate for me to think that I could have. And fairly shortly into that deployment, I realized, you know what, if I can change, you know, maybe 12 people while I'm here in the way they think and the way they proceed with their lives after they've met me, by the example I set and the things that I, you know, the credibility that I gain with them, then, you know, down the line, those 12 people are talking to a few more people who are talking to a few more people, and then there starts to be a kind of a discernible impact. And I kept that kind of way of thinking in the deployments that came after I was in Bosnia. I think one of the things that has always troubled me was when I would meet someone like yourselves, who lives there, who's really just at a disadvantage because of where they were born. They could otherwise flourish in, you know, in a lot of other countries. If they'd been born in the UK or Sweden or the United States or Canada, they could go on and be a veterinarian or a journalist or a television repairman or any other number of things. But what you're seeing is a bright person who is kind of condemned, not like a death sentence, but in a way it is, because, you know, their aspirations really might only bring them to selling magazines at a kiosk in some lousy part of a city where they could get blown up by an extremist. And coming across those people used to really, well, still does agitate me, because there's no need for it. And yet it happens, whether it's, you know, a religion that's twisted around, or corruption within a society, or terrible leaders, or, you know, people squandering the assets of a country. I would look when I was, before I had, you know, in the push up into Iraq, you know, you were in Kuwait, or we were in Kuwait, and, you know, you couldn't find a Kuwaiti, as I kind of put it, that had any calluses. They had, you know, great oil wealth, and they brought people in from all around the world to do all of the manual kind of work to keep Kuwait moving. And then you get up into Iraq and you see this, just, you know, it's like 500 or 600 miles to Baghdad, and you get up there and they've got the oil wealth, they've got the Tigris and the Euphrates, they've got the agricultural lands. There's no reason that they couldn't be as soft and lazy as the Kuwaitis. And yet their country was a completely different picture. It was the corruption, it was the needless killings, it was the rampant, you know, just backbiting and revenge killings and things like that were going on when we came into the city. That was just, you know, it makes you just feel really bad that innocent people are born into a society like that and then forced to be a part of it and bear the brunt of it, and then they can't get out of the cycle.